My name is Krasimir Kabakciev, and this is my second lecture on compositional aspect. The first lecture was for a general audience, and last time I told you that the second lecture would be mainly for high-class specialists. It is on English material, including Old English and Middle English, and Slavic language data, in areas such as aspect, tense, and nominal determination. The lecture is actually a PowerPoint presentation that I gave on the island of Naxos, Greece, some years ago in July 2018 during a conference on Old and Middle English. The text presupposes knowledge in the spheres just mentioned, but this does not mean that it would be unsuitable for the general audience. Anybody with a good command of English and a sincere interest in grammar is welcome to see this lecture. The text is digitally generated, so it should be more pleasing to the native speaker's ear. At this point, someone may ask me, and what about the Cheshire Cat? Last time you said that the Cheshire Cat from Alice in Wonderland would be discussed. And now you are saying that this lecture is for specialists. Will these specialists be told about a cat from a children's book? Well, first, as we all know, Alice in Wonderland is not a book for children only. Second, be advised in advance, dear listeners, that the amusing and allegedly childish Cheshire Cat will be seen to perform an important role for explaining a very intriguing phenomenon related to language structure. A tip concerning the presentation. Compositional aspect is an extremely difficult problem field, and my suggestion is that you use the pause and go back buttons whenever something is not quite clear. Happy listening.
Slide 1. Hello everybody. This is a PowerPoint presentation that I made during the third Old and Middle English conference which took place on the island of Naxos, Greece, on July 21, 2018. The title of the presentation is On the Article and Aspect in English in View of Their Interplay and Historical Development. Slide 2. Contents. Historical Development in the Germanic Languages, Fall of Aspect, Rise of Articles, Lice 2000. What are articles for? What is aspect? Compositional aspect, Vercuil 1972, verbal aspect. Verbal aspect as a mirror image of compositional aspect, or vice versa, Kabakciev 2000. Physical versus action nominals and the videographic principle. The article as a direct exponent of boundedness. Implications for research into the historical development. Slide 3. Historical development in the Germanic languages, fall of aspect, rise of articles, Lice 2000. Proto-Indo-European featured aspect as a perfective and imperfective distinction in the verb. In most modern Indo-European languages this distinction was lost, in some it was preserved. Where aspect was lost, articles gradually appeared. Today most modern Germanic languages feature a regular pattern of a definite and an indefinite article. A systematic interplay between the two phenomena was established by Lice, 2000. In her thesis, perfectivity is a form of verbal definiteness analogous to nominal definiteness. Lice analyzed 3 languages, Old Icelandic, Gothic and Old High German, and found they all have a definite article, have no indefinite article, and manifest a correlation between the weakening of the verbal aspect system and the strengthening of the definite article. Slide 4. What are articles for? According to mainstream linguistics, articles express definiteness and indefiniteness. But certain key questions are rarely asked. How do languages without articles manage to function? Compare sentence 1 to sentence 2. 1a, English, a boy saw a girl. The boy kissed the girl. 2a, Russian, Malchik uvidel devachku. Malchik potseleval devachku. B. Montenegrin, Diachaki video diavoichitsu. Diachaki polyubio diavoichitsu. If definiteness and indefiniteness are not obligatorily outwardly expressed across languages but articles do exist in some, Isn't the raison d'etre of the articles different? If English had no articles, the sentences 2a and 2b above would not have sentence 1 as a correspondence but sentence 3. 3. Boy saw girl. Boy kissed girl in hypothetical English without articles. Would in a language like this the hearer recognize boy and girl as indefinite NPs in the first sentence, and as definite NPs in the second? Probably yes, as in Slavic. What are articles for then? Slide 5. What are articles for? What is aspect? Some decades ago a big myth reigned unchallenged in linguistics: English has no devices for the expression of aspect. A big myth today is that articles mainly express definiteness and indefiniteness. The myth about the lack of aspect devices in English and similar languages was shattered in 1972, when a gigantic breakthrough was made in linguistics. Henk Verkuil, a Dutch linguist, discovered compositional aspect, a major language phenomenon. But a long time had to pass before the significance of compositional aspect reached the minds of aspectologists, and not of all of them. The raison d'etre of the articles is not definiteness and indefiniteness. Articles are used to explicate aspect. I explained this for the first time in two publications 34 years ago, Kabakciev 1984a, 1984b. 16 years later I explained it thoroughly in a monograph, Kabakciev 2000. And another 16 years later I explained it again, in an English grammar, Kabakciev 2017. Question: how are articles involved in the explication of aspect? Answer: almost directly, through the compositional and the mapping mechanism. Slide 6. Compositional aspect, Verkuil 1972. Compositional aspect is the explication of perfectivity and imperfectivity in languages like English at the sentence level, as a result of a very complex interplay of grammatical and semantic properties of sentence components, plus pragmatic impacts like knowledge of the world. Here is what compositional aspect is about, Verkuil's examples. Perfectivity schema with the plus principle, Verkuil 1993, S+, V+, DO+, IO+. 4. A. Katinka knitted a Norwegian sweater. B. Gretja walked from the mint to the dam. C. Denuel gave the Labour Party badge to a Congress goer. D. Fritz played Schumann's cello concerto. Imperfectivity schema, a leak in at least one component in the schema above. 5. A. Katinka knitted Norwegian sweaters. B. Women knitted Norwegian sweaters. C. Policeman walked from the mint to the dam. D. Denuel gave the Labour Party badge to Congress goers. E. Fritz hated Schumann's cello concerto. Note: the term compositional aspect was not employed by the finder of the phenomenon Henk Verkuil but later, by other researchers. Slowly and gradually it established itself more than 20 years after Verkuil's, 1972, initial publication. Slide 7. Compositional aspect. In this slide you can see the English sentences, 6a, the girl threw a ball, and 6b, the girl caught a ball, represented in photographs against the beautiful background of Mount Athos. Sentence 6a, the girl threw a ball shows the explication of perfectivity in English in a perfective schema with a physical subject, and a physical object marked as bounded through an article. Sentence 6b, the girl caught a ball shows the so-called mapping mechanism, in which the boundedness of the referent of subject and object is simultaneously mapped onto the referent of the verb, Kabakciev 2000. Thus compositional aspect, as in languages like English, forms a mirror image of verbal aspect, as in Slavic. Subject and object are temporal entities. Slide 8. Verbal aspect. In this slide you can see the Russian sentences, 7a, Devachka brosila mayak girl 3 ball and 7b, Devachka poimala mayak girl caught ball. Sentence 7a shows verbal aspect in a perfective subject-verb-object schema with a physical subject and a physical object in an articleless language. Sentence 7b shows the mapping mechanism in Slavic where the verb referent maps its boundedness onto the subject and object reference. Subject and object reference are temporal entities again. Slavic aspect forms a mirror image with Germanic aspect, where aspect is explicated compositionally, Verkuil 1972, Kabakciev 2000. Slide 9. Verbal aspect as a mirror image of compositional aspect, or vice versa. In the picture here you can see the girl throwing the ball, and the diagrams below show compositional aspect as a mirror image of verbal aspect, or vice versa, verbal aspect as a mirror image of compositional aspect. The difference and the interdependence between verbal and compositional aspect are explained in Kabakciev, 2000. See the main references at the end of the presentation. A key point is that physical objects denoted by subjects and objects are treated as temporal entities. Slide 10. Physical vs. action nominals. Compare sentence 8, a similar sentences with entities that appear to be physical. 8, a boy kicked the ball. In imperfective sentences, 9, the zero article imparts non-boundedness, lack of bounds, to the relevant NP. But look at the last sentence. And also, let's have an idiomatic expression such as in sentence 9e. 9a. The boy kicked balls. B. Boys kick balls. C. Boys kicked a ball. D. The boy played ball. E. The boy kicked ass. Question: are ball and ass physical entities? The obvious answer is no. They may appear physical, but they are not. They are action nominals. Slide 11. Physical vs. action nominals. So far we have had physical entities like girl, boy, ball that have the property of being able to move. A train also has this property. 10a. A train entered the station, B. A train left the station. 11a. A train arrived, see picture, B. A train departed. But what about the physical entity station? A train normally moves, a station does not. Does this mean that a train can be a temporal entity but a station cannot? A problem for the thesis? Not really. Because language is not about real-world properties of objects. Language is about the way objects are perceived, encoded in the brain and processed for the purposes of human communication. Slide 12. Physical versus action nominals. According to traditional linguistics, there are physical nominals like station and train, and there are action nominals, noise, blow, arrival, departure, etc. They are action nominals in themselves, as lexical entries. They can denote bounded entities and an indefinite article, an exponent of boundedness, is usually in place then. When used with a zero article, action nominals may denote non-bounded entities. Is the distinction between physical and action nominals crucial for the analysis of aspect? Not really. Important, but not crucial. Because when directly associated with an action, all nominals become action nominals, as already shown. But let us consider another two interesting sentences with a physical subject and an action nominal as object. Slide 13. Physical versus action nominals and the videographic principle. Here, 12a is perfective sentence and 12b is an imperfective sentence. The skater is a physical nominal, and axles are action nominals. 12a. The skater performed an axle, perfectivity. B. The skater performed axles, imperfectivity, i.e., indefinite iterativity. In sentence 12a, perfectivity is explicated thanks to the article, whereby the temporal boundedness of the referent of subject and object is simultaneously mapped onto the referent of the verb. Imperfectivity in sentence 12b is due to the zero article imparting non-boundedness to the object, which is then mapped onto the verb, and the verb receives an imperfective reading. There is an inseparable unity between an axle and performed in sentence 12a, and between axles and performed in sentence 12b. See the next slide, 14, for diagrammatic representations. Slide 14. Physical versus action nominals and the videographic principle. Here we have the same sentences, 12a the skater performed an axle, perfective, and 12b, the skater performed axles, imperfective, indefinite iterativity. Note that in sentence 12a, the temporal boundedness of the referent of the object, an axle, is mapped onto the referent of the verb. Conversely, in sentence 12b, the temporal non-boundedness and indefinite iterativity of the referent of the object, axles, is mapped onto the referent of the verb, and the verb, performed, receives an imperfective interpretation, non-bounded iterativity. Because of the action status of axle or axles, there is an inseparable unity between an axle and axles and performed. But what about the skater? Where is the skater? Is the skater a person sitting on a bench nearby? Slide 15. Physical versus action nominals and the videographic principle. To answer the question about the skater, is the skater a person sitting on a bench nearby, let us see what an axle is. In the picture here, the axle is in black. It has a definite starting point and a definite end point. Slide 16. Physical versus action nominals and the videographic principle. To give a good answer to the question, observe again what an axle is. The axle is in black. It has a definite starting point and a definite end point. The question was, where is the skater? Is she sitting on a bench nearby? The answer, the skater is not sitting on a bench nearby. The skater is inseparable from the action. The skater coincides with the action. Another question. Is the representation above a picture? The answer is no. The representation is nominally a picture, but actually it is a video. Slide 17. Physical versus action nominals and the videographic principle. Human memory is photographic rather than videographic. Humans and objects in motion are, as a rule, reduced to pictures in human memory. A photo can help guess what situation the entity is at the moment of the shot. But it does not show the action. The connection between nominal and verbal entities can thus be understood better through a videographic rather than a photographic representation. Now compare sentences 13 and 14. 13. A. A noise was heard. B. Noise was heard. 14. A. A bomb was heard. B. Bombs were heard. Are a bomb and bombs physical nominals here? NB. In many cases nouns appear to be physical nominals while actually they are hidden action nominals. Slide 18. Physical versus action nominals and the videographic principle. 15. A. Mark played the ball off the net beautifully. B. Mark played balls off the net beautifully. 16. A. Iniesta passed a ball to Messi. B. Iniesta passed balls to Messi. 17. A. The judge banged a gavel. B. The policeman drew a pistol. Aspect is most readily explained by the temporal status of nominals in the sentence. In the relevant position in a sentence, the article is a direct exponent of boundedness, with both physical and action nominals. This function, intertwined with other factors, is not readily available to the naked eye. But a misconception of the mechanism of perfectivity effectuated through the article is an insurmountable impediment to the understanding of both aspect and the articles. Slide 19. Physical versus action nominals and the videographic principle. Now let's have a cat, a physical entity. And let's have the cat grin. Why grin? Slide 20. Physical versus action nominals and the videographic principle. Because the cat saw the portrait and Naxos. And thought, wow. How beautiful. Slide 21. The article as a direct exponent of boundedness. The cat gave a grin. Here again we have the temporal boundedness of the reference of subject and object, the cat and a grin, mapped onto the referent of the verb, gave, hence gave receives a perfective interpretation. And hence, again, there occurs an inseparable unity between the referent of verb, gave, object, a grin, and subject, the cat, exactly as in the skater performed an axle. Question to the audience, does the idea of this unity between cat and grin ring a bell? Slide 22. The article as a direct exponent of boundedness. Doesn't ring a bell? Time to recall the Cheshire Cat then, from Alice in Wonderland. Not only can the Cheshire Cat grin, his grin is miraculous, it remains for some time after the cat is no longer in view. With this episode in what is known as nonsense literature, Lewis Carroll gives a grin at modern linguistics, offering a no-nonsense explanation of one of the riddles of aspect. The ingeniously portrayed cat grinning nonsense, known to most children in the world, is no nonsense at all, and mirrors the failure of linguistics for so many decades to define aspect. Aspect is not a category per se, as had been held for a long time. Exactly on the contrary, aspect reflects the temporal properties of the reference of nominals associated with a verb. There can be no grin without a cat, there can be no Axel without a skater. And within this interplay the article is a direct exponent of boundedness, boundedness being part of the temporal features of nominal reference. Slide 23. The Cheshire Cat, grinning. I've often seen a cat without a grin, thought Alice, but a grin without a cat. It's the most curious thing I ever saw in my life. The original Cheshire Cat, portrayed by the illustrator Sir John Tenniel, circa 1889. Slide 24. Implications for research into the historical development of English. Old English is a mystery in terms of article and aspect and their interplay, but this is not strange, bearing in mind that even modern grammars of modern English fail to explain this interplay, but see Kabakciev 2017. What is known about Old English? Old English had a system of two tenses, no indefinite article, and a definite article with an irregular pattern of use. What is not known about Old English? It is not known how aspect worked and what its exact exponents were. The lack of understanding of how aspect and articles work in modern Germanic leads to a lack of a conceptual model of how aspect disappeared and article systems emerged in Germanic. What is needed? Badly needed is a sound theoretical base, a consensus on a unified theory of how grammatical categories, articles, aspect, case, work and develop in time in separate languages and across different languages, related and non-related. This paper offers an analytical approach. The article in modern English is a direct exponent of boundedness. It triggers perfectivity at the level of the sentence through the compositional and the mapping mechanism. If this approach is applied to Old English or a similar language, it will bear fruit. Slide 25. Main literature. Slide 26. Thank you very much for your attention. This photo shows the statue of Kuroros of Flario, Naxos, 7th century BC. And I hope nobody dropped dead hearing that a railway station can be a temporal entity. And a bounded one at that.